just going to start. I picked up a copy of the Wall Street Journal on the way over here, and there was an amazing story about license plate searches in the United States. And many police departments, probably here as well, have these little cameras they can put on their cars and capture license tags pretty much at ease. And buried in the story, there's a guy in Arizona who has a startup company that is using this technology all on their own to record license tags all around the whole United States of America. And he's kind of very blunt. He doesn't say what he's going to do with it, or he's a little bit vague about the business model. And right toward the end, he just kind of casually drops that they've got 700 million license plate tags in their database, and now they're trying to figure out what to do with it. And I read this thing, and I went, wow, this is amazing. Like, what is this? Is this a commercial activity? Is this a crime? You know, is it okay to tag 10 people but not 10 million or 700 million? And so I was just going to kind of throw out, so that, I mean, this is an amazing world, and you know, and he was still working out his business model. It sounded like talking to somebody from San Francisco, and maybe he'll pivot or something. But he swore, he said he wasn't going to make it available to just anybody. He said, you know, you wouldn't be able to call up and say, where was my wife last week? But you could, maybe if you were a detective, you could. So I was just going to ask, I mean, in a world where that kind of thing is possible, where do you draw lines? I mean, it's almost impossible. Does anybody have anything?
Well, I can tell you what some companies are doing with that data right now. You know, the fact that you can, so how it works is they drive a car around, and it's got two cameras on the bottom, and they're aimed at basically the same height where the license plate would be. And it reads the license plates very, very quickly. So you can drive at 30 kilometers an hour and pick up every license plate you're driving.
Or if you Google, you can just have the car drive itself around. I mean,
yes, absolutely, absolutely. Better than a human, in fact. So, and that's probably coming next, because why pay somebody to drive around and look for license plates? But so what one of these companies does, so it actually employs people instead of bots to drive cars around, and they do it in the middle of the night, right? Because everybody's parked. There's nobody on the street. And they'll drive through apartment complexes and drive through parking lots, and it just reads all the plates. And see, what happens is, as it's reading plate by plate by plate by plate, literally it's reading dozens of plates per minute, and it's sending the information up to the cloud, back down to a data server where it says, okay, and it's matching these license plates up with their financial records. And it's looking for people who have not paid for their car in several months. Now, when you get somebody, when it finds a license plate of a car that in fact is not paid up full, and it is in fact in default, the guy stops his car, calls the cops, he tells them what they're going to do, and the repo guy comes and takes the car. And so literally, these guys will drive around all night, and they get paid by the number of scans they make and the number of cars that get repossessed. And so, you know, it's no longer just, okay, they know where I live, they're going to come take my car. It's no matter where you park, they're going to find you, and they're going to get their car back. And that's one way it's being used. So it's interesting that they have 700 million license plates. I think there's only 250 million cars in the U.S. So, but yeah, I mean that's one thing they're doing. So I guess it's good. I guess it's also kind of weird. You know?
There are examples as well where, you know, just to use the automotive example, where you can use data for your own benefit, right? So it's not always a case where you have this organization, this big brother organization that looks at you and does all sorts of horrible things. There's a company in California called MileSense, which I like, which is a company that has created an iPhone app that you can carry around in your car, and it's basically going to record every single of your movements. Do you turn to the left? Do you turn to the right? How fast do you turn to the left? How fast do you turn to the right? And what this establishes is how good a driver you are. And basically, if you are open to it, you work with insurance companies. Progressive is one of them. And if with your iPhone app you've established that you are a good driver, you actually get insurance at lower cost. So this is an example where data empowers you to do better.
Yeah, but I think what's very interesting about this example is that it shows that this kind of application can be basically built by a 16-year-old tech enthusiast who's just downloading some kind of manuals how to build the camera and how to put it in front of your car. I bet there's some kind of web resource where this manual is available. So the thing is that everybody can build a thing like that and collect like millions of data points and doesn't have to think about what to do with it. And I think this is a great thing. It's, on the one hand, it's opening up a lot of creativity of things that are not dominated by how to make money out of it, but just by it can be done, so let's do it, and then we see what to do with it afterward. But on the other hand, it's kind of creepy, because everybody can link data points and find out some things that you told very different audiences on the web, different platforms, but now they can be linked. For example, that, your financial records and where you're driving right now. So this is kind of the creepy side, but it's together.
Go ahead.
But I think it's very important that everyone can do it. And I was struck by the comment that he's not going to let anyone have it. Maybe law enforcement or this and that. It can't be that. It can't be a walled garden with this differential in access to data. Everyone should have access to this data. How much worse if this creepy thing is only in the hands of a few? How much better is it that the 16-year-old can build it, that we can all have access to this? It's just much more egalitarian and safer.
Well, I was reading this on my way to a conference in former East Germany, thinking like, wow, boy, they would have wished they had this. And it's odd, the democratization of Big Brother is a very odd idea. I mean, it's two very clashing kinds of things.
But it's so much better than secret police.
No. I mean, I think net it is, but it just, wow. What happens when Big Brother is everybody? This is a, I mean, if you had, let's just say we had a dream world in which not only does this guy have his 700 million tags, but it's on WikiCrawl, and anybody who wants to can just go check all the time, which is a vision of the future.
Is it going to get creepier and creepier before it gets better, right? I think we all.
Exactly right.
I think we all need to get used to it. I think we all need to be very aware, but I don't know if it's big data or the rise of the machines. Basically, is the story of this generation, right? That's coming up. Having everything sensed through computers, having objects that quantify just about everything you do, and then algorithms that predict what you're going to be doing is going to happen whether we want it or not. And there's going to be 16-year-olds, there's going to be large corporations, there's going to be the government, there's going to be all of us. And by the way, speaking of creepy and 16-year-old, has everybody heard the Target story?
Predicting
around pregnancy. So it's sort of 6 months old, but it's been making the rounds in the US. Apparently it's true. So if you haven't heard the story, so Target, very large retail chain, millions of customers, millions of products, very large data sets. They unleashed that to their in-house data scientists that started cranking the data with the overall goal of giving coupons with discounts to very specific groups and segments of their customer base. So anyway, one of the things that they found is that when you have a specific sequence of purchases for a woman, it indicates that it's likely that she is pregnant. So I think it was
you don't need that much data for that.
So I think it was a combination of is it working now? So it's a combination of unscented lotions and I think large cotton swabs, and then 2 weeks later, a specific type of vitamins. So the story, which apparently is a true story, is that they send a coupon to a family in Minneapolis, I believe. And the family got this, and then the dad went to Target and went to do a screaming match and just basically said, well, you guys sent a coupon for baby products to my 16-year-old daughter. How on earth can you do that? Are you trying to encourage teen pregnancy? This is completely, And the store manager, being a nice man from the Midwest, apologized profusely and again and again and again. And apparently made a courtesy call 2 weeks later and said, well, I just wanted to call and say hi and make sure that you were fine with everything. And the father said, well, actually, there's a little bit of an update in my family, which is that apparently there were activities that went on in my house I was not aware of because my 16-year-old girl is pregnant, and you send coupon to a pregnant girl. So it doesn't get any creepier than that, but that's the world we live in. And I think, just not to overlabor the point, but the way we got used to having our identity online, we're going to have to get used to having more and more data online, right? Years ago, if you like social networks, you would go on MySpace and you would never put your name. Then came Facebook, a few years ago, and then everybody started putting their name. The next step is, putting all your data online.
There's a widespread conceit that Europeans are comfortable with government surveillance and data collection and uncomfortable with commercial data collection. And Americans are the opposite, comfortable with commercial and uncomfortable with government. Do you guys agree with that? And do you see any changes coming in that lineup?
Just one thing that certainly would never happen is what happened when I checked in here at the hotel and they gave me a data, like a little leaflet with your data rights.
Right.
I suppose the same thing, hopefully the same thing happened to you.
Yeah, no, I was shocked too.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. Well, it was like, but I also put it into the category of things I'll never read.
Yeah, I didn't even know I got that because I didn't look at it yet.
Anyway, well, Benedikt, why don't you start?
Yeah, I think this is kind of true, but right now it's changing. I think really in Europe we have this history of authority of very dictatorships and collecting data and trying to suppress people. So this is kind of it was really the main concern, but now it changed because I think the internet and everything that can be done with it was like that new to people, so it didn't, or it's still in progress, didn't grab the way things could be connected and insights could be derived from this. So basically, one story I built 5 years ago, so I built a analytic engine that's looking at the way blogs are linking to each other in Germany. I did this with the German blogosphere. And then I just looked at what's on the blog rolls linking to your favorite blogs, and then this kind of worked, and it showed, well, you're connected to these other guys. And then I got some very concerned emails by people who said, well, on this engine, you just said really my closest friends and my families, and no one knows that. And how do you know this? So this is kind of, I think it's kind of a technology that's appearing to be magic, or it looks like magic, and this is kind of frightening. And now it's the large corporations that are doing things, and the license plate story is a nice story, but I think what's kind of creepy, and this is in Europe a really large concern, is we do not know that we are being scanned. So this is the one thing is access to the data, and the other thing is we do not really have a feeling of what's done with data. So in government we have laws, and we can fill out forms that give us our data back and things like that. We have right to insight, but with corporations it's kind of difficult. So I think this is one of the things that's right now in Europe it's changing, but it's some week it's more the government, some week it's more the corporations.
Matt?
So I mean, on Europe versus US, I think it's a general sort of frame of mind about how you regulate things as well. I mean, I'm originally from France, which tends to sort of over-regulate just about everything. I think the US is a more liberal approach. I think there's, what's interesting is that there is a sort of geographic differences in the way you look at data. I think there's a generational difference in the way you look at data as well. I think the younger generation has, to a large extent, given up on privacy, or doesn't really think of privacy that much, because they see the trade-off. So especially when it comes to corporations, arguably to the government as well, I think even I personally feel a lot more comfortable if I give out data, but I get something back. So, Facebook, again, classic example where they know everything about me, but they give something back that I may decide is valuable, not valuable. But the point is, they give me a lot back. And I think, when I talk to sort of 20-year-old entrepreneurs, there is just absolutely no concern about privacy. It just doesn't come. That's the world they grew up in, they feel comfortable in, and it's just not concerned.
The Zuckerberg effect.
Zuckerberg effect, yes. I mean, the fact that you grow up as a digital native and every single thing you do is online, and where's the problem?
Do you see? I mean, are we just waiting for something? I mean, are we waiting for another shoe to drop on that? I mean, I think you're right that many, if not most, for internet business models for sure, make that trade-off of you give us data. Other than the subscription models, it effectively becomes you give us data, we give you fund services. Are we just living in a kind of a fool's paradise here and at some point is there going to be just some unbelievable incident that's going to cause everybody to go, whoa. I mean, a kind of giant version of your Midwest father with the pregnancy stuff.
I hope so. I think that possibly Europeans are a little too scared of data, but Americans are too naive about privacy and data. These digital natives that are willing to give away everything, yeah, you get something in return, but what you're giving away, you don't even understand. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on a lot of these services. So I hope that there's something that reveals to these people who are so free with their privacy and not aware of it, exactly what the trade is.
Chris?
Well, I think, I'm not sure if there's going to be like a macro disaster, but I think there's probably going to be a lot of small, horrific stories that come out, of someone who was stalked online and, just bad things happen when people have access to data they didn't used to. And we're talking about, say, sick individuals rather than, say, a government or a large corporation doing something heinous to you. I do think young people now think of privacy more of, you can't see into my house. I can pull my shades down, that's privacy. The online world, I think most people expect with a web app, they expect to give something away, they expect to get something back, and they like that. They like getting more out of the application, which they can't get if they're not giving it that information. But I think the bigger worry to me would be that you had a series of these, say, personal disasters that were very publicized in a row. That led to, of course, knee-jerk legislation that was more damning than it should be to one industry or whatever it was. And I'm not a rah-rah guy one way or the other. I like to think I'm pretty even keeled, but I do think certainly in the U.S. The government can be very reactive and put in laws that, in fact, hurt the whole in order to try to fix one small problem that happened to one person.
How about this? I mean, I'm fascinated by the question of fake data and phantom data. Everyone's, spam in the email world is a ubiquitous thing. It now turns out that 10, 20, 30, in some cases 40% of Twitter so-called followers are actually bots, and that you can just go buy them. And in general, there's good data and there's bad data, and a lot of the data we just kind of blindly are assuming that everything that's out there is correct. I mean, my favorite one is I can now confess the oldest, I think, person on Facebook for the following reason. When it first came out, I worked for Wired magazine, so I wanted to get on this thing. When it first became eligible for non-EDU people to sign up, I did, and you had a pull down with how old you were, and it was up to 99 years old, so I just punched 99. This was like 6 years ago, so I'm now up to like 106 on Facebook, and no one can ever catch me because it still only goes up to 99, so I'm going to die as the oldest guy on Facebook. But it's completely fake. I mean, and even though Facebook will say, oh, we require real identities here. Well, yes and no, they don't check anything. How serious is, and obviously the other thing is that as something becomes more valuable, the incentive to people to do fake stuff becomes larger. And if open data bank, you guys are talking about open data, well, wow, let's just make tons of really, I'm a millionaire, hey, I may.
But the open data, much like, Linus's comment on open source software that all bugs are shallow when you have enough eyes, part of the appeal of open data is...
That would be Linus Torvald.
Yes, sorry. part of the appeal of open data is quality control.
So I can't be 99 forever.
Facebook is really locked onto their data. Eventually they have to, they grew up in this era of no regulation where they think they can just own this data without sharing it or giving other people access to it. So who knows how long it's going to take them to
So in a future world, there's going to be somebody going, he's not 99.
I think in a future world we have more eyeballs on the data and we have higher quality, cleaner data and easier detection of false data.
So it's today, the world of being able to tell that you're not 99 is today. I mean, one of the very basic principles of data science is to cross-correlate data sets. So, you're 99 on Facebook, but, it's very easy to find out that, you went to X school during X year to Y year. And any data scientist can, figure out exactly how old you are and a lot more information in about a minute.
Interesting.
It doesn't take a data scientist. I think every kind of intelligent algorithm would just ignore the age you put in Facebook and just calculate your real age from your connections, from your links.
Right.
And this is better data than the thing you filled in. So this is kind of
you can't hide anymore. You can't.
No, you absolutely.
False IDs are things of the past.
But the more important message is that bad data will not be perpetuated.
There's other types of bad data, though. I mean, outside of personal, and there's a lot of people there's a lot of places that look to benefit from creating bad data. For instance, my little startup, we use the web to advertise, of course, and we buy space based on price, based on CPM, based on cost per click, blah, blah, blah. And we plug into these random networks that, in fact, are starting to work more and more like Wall Street. The space, you don't know exactly how much traffic there's going to be on the web day to day. And so the space on a web page actually goes up for bid seconds, as it appears, somebody's bidding on it. And it's really like trading on the stock market. They've hired a lot of these programmers from Wall Street to work in advertising, to bid on these different spaces and to figure out, okay, well, these are the cookies of the person looking at the page. That means they're this valuable because they normally go to this page and this page and this page. I want that person, I'm willing to pay X. So the point being, we plugged into some of these networks, and we thought we had found a very attractive price for traffic at one point. This is just last month. And we were very, very happy with what we were paying for the traffic. And I was looking through some of the data, and I'm looking at this. I'm like, man, we are crushing it with this new network. And I look, and so there's a number of things I do when I look at this, and I'm looking at where the IP addresses are. And you can see we were targeting certain zip codes in certain places, and they were spread across these zip codes. In fact, proportionally, as you would expect, according to the populations of each zip code. So it seemed to be real traffic, right? And then I went and looked at how they behaved on our page, where they went on our app. And as it turns out, I'm like, this is bizarre. They're just going to all these places that normal people don't go. I mean, 1 out of like 10 visitors was going to the terms page. People in America do not go to the terms page. And it was persistent all the way through. They were basically dividing their clicks proportionally between every link on the page. And at some point I'm like, this is fake. It's fake. And it's a giant botnet that has taken over lots of people's computers in different places, which is how it imitates the IPs, right? And so we were paying a lot of money for all this traffic, and I eventually had to go back to the place I was supplying, and I said, this is not real. Here's what real traffic looks like. Here's what it does. Here's what fake traffic looks like. That's trying to be real, and it's like clicking around my site and doing all these things, but here's what the real traffic does. This doesn't resemble it at all. And so so the data, in fact, help us crack the problem, but it also helped create the problem, and that they are able to. So it's just it's an arms race.
Right. This is when I ask, are there questions in the audience? If there are, put up hand. Is that a hand up? No, that's a camera up. Here we go, right here.
Regarding to user green speed.
Hold on 1 second. We got a microphone here.
So regarding to Lisa Green's speech, just imagine a data world without secret. We are just sharing the data with each other. What about the secrets? What about the stopping the hackers. And what do you think about that?
So I do think that not all data should be open. There are limits. Health data should not be open. There are limits to that. Where we draw the lines is an ongoing discussion, but of course some things should still be protected.
So who defines this?
This is an ongoing conversation between world governments, local governments, technology leaders, standards bodies like the W3C, and it is hard to define. Some things are very clear. Health data should not be accessible to the public.
But just imagine we are just merging our information and we are just getting in one level. What about that?
We were just getting what?
In one level. I'm just opening up my secrets of my company. I'm just putting everything on table. Everybody can see it.
Right.
You too. We get in one level. What about that?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So you're opening up your company secrets as
Yeah,
commercial secrets.
Yeah, what I have as a secret, as data, I'm just programming and so on. I'm just opening up to the whole world.
I mean, you're suggesting people should do that.
Yeah. What about that? If you're just getting in, come on.
So I'm the proponent for the more open data, the better. I think that there's very small that goes in the category of should not be open.
Well, let me devil's advocate a little. You mentioned flu tracking,
Right.
but health shouldn't be.
Personal health data.
Flu doesn't count?
Well, also there is anonymization, and people can argue about the efficacy of anonymization, but when you talk about an aggregate flu trends in New York City, you're not identifying that Christopher got the flu. You're not identifying that Christopher went to the doctor and had a genetic predisposition for something that might endanger his ability to get insurance in the US.
So in effect, there are three categories. There's super secret data, there's anonymized data, and then there's everything else.
I would say that's maybe true. Is that addressing your question?
But by the way, there's we've talked about regulation and laws, but this, possibilities around private sector solutions to all of this, right? And I think we have somebody from one of those companies speaking later. But there is something, for example, called the Locker Project, which is, and there's several companies, including one called Singly, which are building solutions based on that. The whole concept is that you take control of your own personal data and you lock it and you expose it to services, vendors, companies in a manner that you control. So what that means in practice is still being defined, but again, legislation is just one way of addressing it, and maybe we'll collectively come up with a better way of addressing the matter.
But I think there's this kind of saying, with big data comes big responsibility, and I think this is really true, because there is a lot of things, data that is open in the public, but it's not meant to be open in public to everyone. So what someone is posting, for example, on his Twitter stream, and its public Twitter stream, can be quite personal information and not fit to share to other platforms. And the thing is that I don't think regulation or laws can solve this problem, because this is another level. It's about ethics. It's about an ethical use of algorithms. And basically every company that's doing big data should answer this question.
But wait, are you saying that updates posted on Twitter should not be public? They're broadcasting it to the internet.
Yeah, but basically it's not the same thing as if you're writing an article for a newspaper that's published nationwide. So then it's meant for public. It's in the public sphere. But on Twitter, it's kind of a hybrid space. It's some things I'm posting there are public statements, and some things are just conversations with people that are happening in public or in public sphere, but are not not the same, don't have the same quality. They are not public statements, but they're personal conversations.
Well, wouldn't you want to use email for that, or IM, or?
No, I don't use email.
I think that everything posted on Twitter is public.
So wait, you mean they can see everything I see on Twitter?
Yeah, they can. and I think this kind of goes back to something that you brought up when you said about the license plates, and you said, what's the difference between being able to go in and write down the license plates and being able to scan with software thousands and millions of license plates? So I think what you're saying is that it's okay if I went to your Twitter feed and saw that as an individual human, or a dozen different people saw your private conversation on Twitter, but it's not okay when an algorithm goes through and picks it out based on keywords and then uses that in some sort of application or journalism.
I think the algorithm should have some kind of an ethics module that's really trying to answer this question and trying to answer what could be done with the data. For example, this correlation, this kind of predictors for pregnancy. There should be some kind of built-in ethical considerations. Is this okay? What could happen if we publish this data? What could happen if we send out those coupons?
I think it's more the individual's responsibility of their digital footprint. Like I said, I'm not on Facebook, and I'm very selective about what features I use, much as I believe in open data. I think it's the individual's responsibility for the digital footprint on the internet.
We've got a question over here.
I somehow think, Matthias from Delivery Hero, I somehow think that the discussion is a bit on the wrong side of things, because open data, love it, and I think it's full of opportunities, but those opportunities immediately come with risks. And those don't have to do with what data it is. It does have to do with what data I already have, and with what data I can connect this other data to then de-anonymize it again, for example. And also, I mean, that then is the biggest risk. And although I like, the open data principle, I think that's the risk we need to manage. And I have no solution for that. Do you have any thoughts around that? I mean, that's the interesting part of the discussion, I think.
Anybody want to grab it?
Yeah, basically, I think I really believe in open data, and I think this is a great thing. And I don't have a problem with anyone analyzing my Twitter stream, but I think that the kind of big data literacy has not evolved that far. So there has to be some kind of guidance, some kind of information. Well, some kind of disclaimer. If you're doing this could be the insight derived from your data. For example, if I'm checking in Foursquare at different places, then every single check-in is no problem. But someone who's connecting all the check-ins and connecting all the people who are doing similar kind of check-ins and feeding my Twitter data in this, and then some kind of biographical information, there could be some insight I don't want to share. Maybe for me it's okay, but there could be people who are not aware of what's doing, what the data world looks like, and what can be done with their data. So I think this is the question, and this should be a consideration every data company is answering right now. It could be in 20 years we all are data natives, and so no problem.
I think this is also similar to what Christopher said about being an arms race. Just like the arms race between bad data and being able to detect when it's bad, produce and detect it. The anonymization and the ability to de-anonymize that data is a bit of an arms race. Any other thoughts on this idea of?
No, I think it is. I mean, I think obviously people are always going to use some type of form of regression analysis to figure out, okay, well, yeah, I only have these pieces. Where can I get these pieces and put the whole picture together? But at the same time, I think we've always had that. It just hasn't been electronic. I think when something really bad happens with this, we'll know it, we'll see it, and we'll be able to address it. Right now, I don't know what that is.
Okay, we've got time for one more, and he's over there.
So I'm lucky to be the last one. What always is interesting to me in discussions like that is what you said, for example, that there should be some ethics module or something like that in those algorithms and for analysis similar to that, because I think that's very complicated. The internet is global, it covers all cultures, and it's very hard to put up barriers. And what we consider private, or what we consider something that no one else should know, is much more dependent on culture than we usually like to see. So, for example, what level of income I have was considered quite a private thing in Germany for many years. I don't know how it is in the US. It might be much different in other cultures. And to put a question to Lisa specifically, I think we can find out by statistical analysis and other algorithms a lot of information which people aren't aware that they are giving it out by just documenting their behavior. For example, there were these much featured projects where you could find out sexual preference or even health history by just watching what people posted on Facebook. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges, that what is private is very much a cultural thing, but the internet doesn't stop at cultural barriers. So I don't think that it will be easy to implement an ethics module which takes into account the limits. For example, why should health information be private? It's just a part of our culture. Others might think differently, and I'm quite sure that they will think differently about it in 10 years from now, or 15 years from now. So there are no absolute values.
No.
So what would you do with when you say people should be aware of their informational footprint, or how you call it? How should they be aware of something that they can't be aware of because they can't think about what algorithms can find out about their behavior, about their preferences, without their even knowing themselves sometimes?
I agree. I think, well, first you can suggest people read Christopher's book to see what algorithms can do. But no, this is a problem of education and people understanding. Earlier, I said I almost hope that there is something very negative that opens people's eyes to the risk that they're facing. And I think it's just a matter of education and understanding what you're trading for this fun app when you give up your information, what you can do with this kind of data, and it will come along. I do believe that people are starting to understand the data world more and more. And there will be people who suffer from not understanding this and accidentally sharing things that they don't want to share. It's a growing pain, and I think that the benefits, and that's, I guess I'd really like to close with that comment, that the benefits that we can reap from the data world vastly outweigh all of these risks.